Hey you guys, this is Jessica and Noam here with Reverb at Trax Recording in Chicago, and today we are making another episode of What's That Sound, focusing on the super dead, dry, hi-fi sound of the mid-70s album Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. To get that super dry 70s sound, we used a Ludwig New Sonic snare drum. That's a 14 by 6.5. And then we used a Ludwig Vista-like kick drum, open and with a sleeping bag stuffed in it to get it really dampened. And then we also used Gretsch toms and 14-inch K-Suite hi-hats. And we used an 18-inch Zildjian K-Suite crash.
So the first thing that we noticed when we listened to this track is that it almost sounds as though all the instruments are overdubbed. There's a huge amount of separation between the snare and the hi-hat, right? What that told me is that one, they probably had those two instruments distanced from each other at least a little bit, right? When you're dealing with snares and hi-hats, every inch makes a huge amount of impact on the sound of these instruments, right? So lots of times those instruments might be 2 inches from each other. In this case, we put them 5 inches, 6 inches. I asked Jessica to move her hi-hat a little bit just so that we could have the snare right down the center and the hi-hat over on the right side and not have a ton of crosstalk between those two instruments. In order to make that work, we also mic'd all the instruments really, really close up. And we also heavily filtered the overheads, so the overheads were just cymbal microphone. So on this track for the overheads, we used AKG 451s, right? Now those are fairly thin microphones, right? They don't give the weight that using a 47 on the overheads or a U87 on the overheads would give us. But in this particular track, we don't need that weight, right? Our overheads are just detailed, they're just high-end, and the 451s are going to be absolutely perfect for that. On the kick drum, we used an RE20. That's a super classic 70s kick drum sound, right? Really punchy, really round, just comes fully baked a lot of the time. On the snare drum, we used a AKG 414. Now that is a large diaphragm condenser microphone, right? But it has a 20 decibel pad, so you can stick it right up on a drum and it's still going to sound great. It's not going to overload. That microphone on a snare drum gives it a rounded sound, right? It's not super mid-range forward like an SM57 is. It extends deeper, it extends higher, and it has a little bit more scoop to the mid-range. And so the result is this big snare drum with a big body and a really crispy top. Feels perfect for Fleetwood Mac. On the toms, we used 421s, classic, minimal EQ, sound great. So let's go ahead and listen to all the tracks individually, and then let's see how they all work together. So these are our overheads. There's almost nothing there. They're just like, there's basically nothing, right? We're filtering all of it, all of the low end, all the meat of the instruments, everything out, right? So that we just get this high end. But the result is we have very little snare from these microphones. So we don't get a lot of like snare out on the sides. The snare is very direct, very focused in the middle. And we also get this hi-hat sound that it does not sound anything like hi-hats sound in a room, right? But it has a really, really crisp, focused sound to it. Let's add in the snare drum. By the way, no compression on anything. All the dynamic control in this drum sound that we're working with right now is from tape saturation. We put tape emulators on every track, and we just pushed it a little bit so that if Jessica really dug into the snare for one hit, rather than compressing, it would saturate a little bit. Here's our snare sound. Super tight, super focused, and you'll notice almost no hi-hat. Now, I I cheated a little bit on this sound, right? Because I wasn't getting quite the punch that I wanted. That could have been because of the drum. It could have been because of, the way that they hit the drum. It could have been a million things, but I added a little bit of a envelope follower on this particular track, so it added just a little bit of snap to the drum, and it took away a little bit of the sustain of the drum. Sue me. So, pretty basic kick drum sound. We are doing a little bit of EQ. We're adding a little bit of low end. We're taking away a little bit of the like mid-range honkiness, and we are also filtering everything above like 80 hertz, something like that, right? So it's really focused kick drum sound. It's not a ton of low end, but it's once it gets in with the bass, it's going to be really, really full. Tom mics, pretty down the center, 421s, nothing too remarkable about them, but they work really well in the track. The last piece of the puzzle is a reverb. We used an EMT 140 plate, and we have it triggering off of all the instruments, right? So the entire drum kit, with the exception of the kick drum, is going to this reverb. Adds just a little bit of ambience, a little bit of space to the sound.
Thanks for watching another episode of What's That Sound? Let us know in the comments what other songs you'd like to see us break down, and we'll see you next time.